It was a quiet suburban neighborhood at night, and a cautious college student named Emily was returning home for the holidays. The winter air was chilly, and a light mist hung in the air, creating an eerie atmosphere. As she walked down the dimly lit street, she couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Glancing over her shoulder, she noticed a figure lurking in the shadows, just a few steps behind her. Her heart skipped a beat, and a shiver ran down her spine. Emily quickened her pace, trying to dismiss her growing unease. But no matter how fast she walked, the stranger seemed to match her every step. Panic began to set in as she realized that this was no mere coincidence. She decided to confront him, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. Turning around abruptly, she locked eyes with the stranger. His piercing gaze sent a chill down her spine. With a sinister smile, he whispered in her ear, "I've been watching you for weeks." Emily's blood ran cold as she spun around, ready to confront her stalker, but he had vanished into thin air. She looked around frantically, her heart pounding in her chest. There was no sign of him anywhere. Was she losing her mind? She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being toyed with, trapped in a twisted game. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's fear grew with each passing moment. Every creak of the floorboards and every rustle of leaves outside her window made her jump. She was on constant edge, haunted by the memory of the stranger's haunting whispers. Desperate for help, she confided in her friends and family, hoping they would believe her and offer some solace. But their dismissive responses only deepened her isolation. One night, after attending a party with her friends, Emily found herself walking home alone. The streets were deserted, and the night seemed unusually silent. As she neared her house, a shadow emerged from the darkness. It was him, the stranger who had tormented her for weeks. This time, he held a gleaming knife in his hand. A scream escaped Emily's lips as she turned and sprinted with all her might. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the sound of her heavy breathing. But the stranger was relentless, his footsteps closing in on her with terrifying speed. She knew she had to find help, or else she would become another victim. Just when Emily felt her legs giving way, she saw a flickering light in the distance. Relief flooded over her as she realized it was a police car, sirens blaring, racing towards her. With renewed hope, she pushed herself harder, urging her tired muscles to keep going. The stranger's heavy breathing grew more distant as he realized the police were closing in. The police car screeched to a halt, and two officers emerged, their expressions a mix of concern and determination. Emily collapsed into their arms, gasping for breath, tears streaming down her face. She pointed in the direction the stranger had fled, desperately trying to convey the danger she had faced. The officers radioed for backup and reassured Emily that she was safe now. They quickly spread out, searching the area for any trace of the stalker. Meanwhile, they escorted Emily to the safety of their patrol car and called for an ambulance to tend to her physical and emotional wounds. In the days that followed, the police conducted a thorough investigation, dedicating themselves to bringing the stalker to justice. They enlisted the help of forensic experts, interviewed witnesses, and analyzed any evidence that could lead to his capture. Eventually, their efforts paid off. The stalker, identified as a known offender with a history of stalking and harassment, was apprehended. Emily received the news with a mix of relief and lingering trauma. Knowing that her ordeal had come to an end brought her a sense of closure, but she knew the road to recovery would be long. Emily sought professional help to overcome the deep scars left by her harrowing experience. With the support of her loved ones and therapists, she gradually regained her sense of security and rebuilt her life. She became an advocate for victims of stalking, sharing her story to raise awareness and empower others to speak out against such heinous acts. In the depths of a moonlit forest, where the canopy of ancient trees swayed with an eerie creak, I found myself venturing deeper into the heart of darkness. The dense undergrowth clawed at my clothes, leaving tattered shreds of fabric in its wake. Fear coiled around my heart like a vise, and a shiver ran down my spine as the full moon cast its pale glow upon the desolate landscape. I had come to this forsaken place for one reason alone, a reason that gnawed at the edges of my sanity with every passing day: the fear of becoming a monster. My name is Emily Sinclair, and I am a tormented loner, haunted by the whispers of the past and the shadows that danced in the recesses of my mind. I sought solace in the wilderness, hoping to find answers to the questions that plagued me. The night air was heavy with an otherworldly stillness, broken only by the distant howl of a wolf, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the darkness. As I ventured deeper into the forest, the trees closed in around me, their gnarled branches intertwining like bony fingers, creating an oppressive atmosphere. The ground beneath my feet grew moist and spongy, the stench of decay permeating the air. Strange, phosphorescent mushrooms sprouted from the decaying undergrowth, casting an ethereal glow upon the forest floor. Their sickly green light illuminated grotesque shapes, shadows that seemed to shift and writhe with a life of their own. A frisson of unease ran through me as I realized that I was now alone. Eyes, gleaming with feral hunger, glinted in the darkness. The forest was alive with unseen creatures, their presence a constant reminder of the tenuous hold I had on my own humanity. Paranoia gripped me, the feeling that I was being watched, hunted, becoming too difficult to dismiss. With each passing moment, the forest seemed to change, morphing into a twisted reflection of my fears. The trees contorted into monstrous shapes, their branches reaching out like skeletal limbs, ready to ensnare me. The ground writhed with a carpet of slithering creatures, their grotesque forms blending into the night. I stumbled, my breath coming in ragged gasps, as the forest closed in around me. And then I heard it, the low, guttural growl that sent chills coursing through my veins. It was a sound that spoke of feral instincts, of an unbridled hunger that could not be sated. I turned, my eyes widening in horror as I beheld the creature before me, a werewolf, its massive form silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Its eyes, burning with an unholy fire, locked onto mine, and a surge of primal fear coursed through my veins. The werewolf lunged, its snarling jaws dripping with saliva, and I ran. I ran as if my life depended on it, as if the very essence of my being was at stake. But the forest seemed to conspire against me, the trees closing ranks, trapping me in a nightmarish maze. I stumbled, my legs entangled in the undergrowth, and I fell to the ground. The werewolf closed in, its hot breath on my neck, its claws digging into my flesh. I closed my eyes, waiting for the inevitable, for the transformation that would turn me into a monster. But it never came. I opened my eyes to find the forest bathed in the soft light of dawn. The werewolf was gone, leaving no trace of his presence except for the scars on my body. I had survived, but the fear still lingered, the fear of what I might become. And as I limped out of that cursed forest, I knew that the battle was not over. The darkness within me still loomed, waiting to be unleashed. For in that forest, I had come face to face with the true nature of fear, the fear of becoming the very monster I had sought to escape. And now, with every full moon that graced the night sky, I would forever be haunted by the possibility that one day I might succumb to the darkness and lose myself entirely. Nestled in the heart of the Canadian wilderness, there was a remote sanctuary, isolated amidst the stoic mountain range and the unforgiving boreal forest. The desolate hotel, appropriately named the Frostbite, rose like a monolith against the harsh environment, a solitary beacon of human presence in the vast, unending expanse. It was this secluded hotel that I had selected for my retreat as I sought refuge from the clamorous world that throbbed outside my window. I am a middle-aged novelist, and the crippling noise and pace of urban life had worn me thin. A writer, I believe, thrives on silence and solitude, and the Frostbite, with its distant location and sparse clientele, seemed like the perfect haven. Each room was a cocoon, effectively soundproofed against the howling winds and the occasional murmurs of the neighboring guests. But there was one room adjacent to mine that held a sense of foreboding, room 303. It was the third day of my stay when I first noticed the man occupying room 303. He was a gaunt figure, an embodiment of profound grief, his eyes deep pools of desolation. He radiated an air of discomfort that sent ripples through my otherwise serene world, unsettling the calm surface of my solitude. In the days that followed, I noticed a chilling pattern. Late into the night, the man paced back and forth in his room, his footsteps echoing like a haunting symphony against the solid oak flooring. Sometimes, whispers of uncanny monologues escaped through the walls, punctuated by the unnerving sound of his laughter, disturbing the otherwise peaceful silence of the frostbite. One evening, as I returned from a walk, a nauseating odor greeted me outside his door. It was a sickening amalgamation of metallic tang and decay, a scent that crawled into the nostrils and clung to the senses. The stench was so overwhelming that I found myself retching, my body rejecting the repugnant aroma with a visceral reaction. The very next day, I spotted him struggling to dispose of a large object, hastily concealed in a blood-stained sheet. His knuckles were white as they clung to the gruesome parcel, and a sheen of sweat covered his deathly pale face. Our eyes met, and a sudden chill seized me, an icy grip of terror that eclipsed all reason. That moment sparked an avalanche of dreadful thoughts. My mind was set ablaze with horrifying possibilities. The man's disturbing behavior, the repulsive smell, and the horrific parcel. The sinister puzzle pieces were falling into place, but I shrank from the picture they were forming. Resolute to confront him, I found myself standing before the door of room 303. My fist rose to knock but paused in midair. A wave of apprehension washed over me. I mustered my courage and rapped on the door. The sound echoed in the silence, unanswered. An eerie stillness hung in the air, sending shivers down my spine. My ear pressed against the cold door, straining for any sound, was met with an unsettling silence. Frantic, I sought the hotel manager. I relayed my concerns, my voice shaking as I recounted the peculiar behaviors of the man from room 303. The manager, a burly, pragmatic man, seemed skeptical but was swayed by my obvious distress. The door to room 303 creaked open under the careful hands of the manager, revealing a scene that was beyond any ghastly figment of my imagination. The room was a horrifying tableau, painted in varying shades of crimson. Centered in the room, splayed out grotesquely on the bed, lay the mutilated corpse of a wild boar. Its entrails were strewn around in a macabre display, the sight of which turned my stomach. The manager, ashen-faced, dialed the local authorities, his fingers trembling. I found myself leaning heavily against the wall, trying to reconcile the chilling scene with reality. The air was thick with the stench of death, and the silent accusation of the grotesque sight burned into my retinas. When the authorities arrived, their subsequent investigation unearthed a story that was more horrifying than the grisly scene itself. The man from room 303 was a renowned wildlife biologist suffering from severe psychosis. In his deranged state, he had hunted and killed the boar, deluded into believing that he was conducting groundbreaking scientific research. His insanity was revealed when he was found the next day, wandering aimlessly through the forest, repeating saving humanity in a crazy mantra. The hotel, the forest, the tranquility, everything was tainted with the residue of this terrifying episode.